I have tuned every piano that has been played on the stage of Hadfield Hall for 46 years, and I tell people when they ask that I have seen exactly two performances I will think about on the day I die. The first was given by a Russian boy of 14 in 1981. The second was given by a young man in stained brown coveralls on a wet Tuesday in October, with the seat of his trousers still damp from the rain, and the famous virtuoso who had dared him to play sitting at the second piano in stunned and complete silence by the end of the third phrase. My name is Patrick Carolan. I am 73. I am the man who keeps the pianos. The young man in the coveralls was named Sam Doherty, and he was 28 years old, and on the morning of the duel he was not a pianist. He was a piano mover. He worked for the firm that brought the Steinway in from the warehouse at 4 o'clock every Tuesday for the evening recital. The famous virtuoso was Maestro Leon Vasari. I will not pretend to like him. He had been booked for a single recital that autumn, a fundraiser for the hall's roof, and he had been on tour for 11 months and was tired and superior, and very used to having his shoes brought to him by people he did not look at. He was 34. He had won the Vienna Concerto Prize twice. He had a record contract and a small angry mouth and an opinion about everyone in the room. I knew Sam Doherty, the way you know any decent young man, who comes through the back door of a concert hall every week with his sleeves rolled up. He had a sweet face and a quiet voice. He carried the keyboard end of the grand and never the legs because he had a bad shoulder from a fall as a boy. He always took his cap off when he came into the hall proper, even when there was no one in it but me. We had spoken perhaps 100 times over 4 years. The conversations were always short. They were almost always about the weather, or the rugby, or whether old Mrs. McCabe at the box office had finally retired. Not once had he mentioned pianos as anything but the things he carried. That is what I knew about him on the morning of the duel. By the end of the afternoon, I knew rather more. The afternoon began with the rain. Sam and his 2 younger lads brought the Steinway in at 4:30, the way they always did, soaked to the elbows from the loading bay, and set it on its dolly at the center of the stage. The hall was empty. Vasari was due at 5 for his sound check. His own traveling instrument, a smaller Börsendorfer he insisted on for every venue, had been placed downstage left earlier that morning by the touring crew. The recital was billed as a duo piece for the second half. The maestro and the principal pianist of the regional symphony together, Mozart, 2 pianos. So both instruments needed to be tuned, and both were sitting on the stage when Vasari walked in. I was at the Steinway with my mutes when he came up the aisle. He was wearing a long black overcoat and a cashmere scarf, and he was holding a paper cup of coffee. He did not greet me. He stopped at the foot of the stage steps, looked at the 2 pianos, and addressed his manager over his shoulder. This is not the bench I asked for. Maestro, it's the same model. This is not the bench I asked for. There was a small, polite scramble. The bench was replaced from the wings. The maestro climbed the steps and walked around his Börsendorfer in a slow, proprietary circle. He sat. He played a chord. He played a scale. He looked at the Steinway across the stage with the expression of a man who has been served a wine he did not order. And this one, he said to no one in particular, whose is this one? It's the house piano, maestro, I said. It's been tuned this morning. It's a good instrument. He smiled at me with no warmth at all. A good instrument, yes, they all are, aren't they? It was then that Sam came back across the stage to fetch the dolly. He had his cap in his hand. He was being quiet and quick the way he had been trained to be quiet and quick around performers. Vasari's eyes followed him. They were the eyes of a man who has just realized he has an audience for the next thing he is going to say and intends to use it. You, he said. Boy, yes, you. Sam stopped. Sir. You move these every week. Yes, sir. Do you ever sit down at them? There was a small, awkward pause. Sam looked at me. I did not know what to tell him. He looked back at the maestro. Sometimes I check the tone after we set the legs, sir. Just a chord. Mr. Carolan likes us too. Just a chord, how charming. Vasari took a sip of his coffee. Come here, sit. Show me what a piano mover plays. The maestro's manager, a thin woman with a folder, said, "Leon, please, the sound check." "This is the sound check," Vasari smiled. "I would like to hear what the hands that carry the piano can do at the piano. Come, boy, sit." It was meant as a joke. The maestro's tone made that clear. The two lads in the loading bay had paused at the wings. The hall's lighting man up in the box had set down his pad. I felt the color come up in my own neck. I was about to step in. Sam, in his coveralls, with his cap in his hand, set the cap down very neatly on the corner of the Steinway, and walked over to the Börsendorfer and sat down. Vasari, who had perhaps not expected the boy to actually do it, was for a half-second pleased. He sat back at the Steinway with his arms folded. "Anything you like," he said. "Surprise me." Sam set his hands on the keys of the Börsendorfer. He did not look up. He did not announce a piece. He played the first 3 notes of the Rachmaninoff Prelude in C-sharp minor. I will tell you what those 3 notes were. Anyone who has been near a piano knows them. The slow, heavy bell tone, A, G-sharp, C-sharp, falling down the bottom of the keyboard like 3 coffin nails. They are the most famous opening in all of 19th century piano music. Every pianist living can play them. Most amateurs can play them. The thing is, almost no one can play them the way Sergei Rachmaninoff himself played them on the old wax cylinder from 1928, where each of the 3 notes is its own small dropped world, and the silence between them has its own weight, and the listener understands by the 3rd note that he is in the presence of a piece of music that knows something he does not. Sam played them that way. He did it on the 2nd touch of the instrument. The Börsendorfer, which had been played all morning by the maestro for his warm-ups, answered Sam's first note like a horse that has been waiting all day for the right rider. The hall went still. The lads at the wing stopped moving, Vasari's arms uncrossed. The prelude moves, after the 3 bells, into the long, melancholy descent, the dotted figure that has made grown men weep on bus rides in 3 centuries. Sam took the descent at the speed of a man walking through his own front door. There was no theater in it. There was no posture in it. He played the way Sam Doherty carried the keyboard end of a grand piano, quietly, accurately, with his bad shoulder slightly braced, the way a craftsman does a thing he has been doing for a long time. By the end of the first page, the page that ends in the 4 heavy chords most pianists arrange like furniture across the keyboard, Sam had laid them down so that each chord was a different color. I do not know how a man in stained brown coveralls knew how to do that. I do not know now. I did not know then. I sat down on the edge of the stage where I had been kneeling with my mutes because my knees had decided to. Vasari was no longer leaning back. He was leaning forward. The middle section of the prelude, the agitato, is the part where amateur pianists fall apart. It runs at a clip. It demands an even left hand and a singing right and a stomach for the climb. Sam did not slow down going into it. He did not speed up. He simply changed the weight in his shoulders the way a runner changes gait on a hill, and the Börsendorfer climbed with him. And at the top of the climb, where the chords return and the right hand must hammer through the storm without losing the line of the melody underneath, Sam delivered the storm in a way I have not, in 46 years of standing beside these pianos, heard anyone deliver in this hall except the Russian boy in 1981. Vasari stood up. He stood up the way a man stands up at the back of a church when he has just realized the singing of the choir is not what he came to hear. He walked slowly across the stage to the Börsendorfer. He stopped behind Sam. He listened. He did not interrupt. Sam reached the recapitulation. The slow, heavy bells came back. He laid them down again, a G-sharp, C-sharp, and this time they were not coffin nails. They were the 3 slow chimes of a great church at dawn. He let the final chord settle into its long fade. He set his hands very gently on the polished surface of the bench beside him, and he did not move. The hall was so quiet I could hear the rain on the skylight. Vasari spoke first. His voice had changed. I am not making this up. It was a quieter voice than the one he had walked in with, and there was a thing in it that was not on any of his recordings. "Where did you learn that?" he said. It was not a question, it was a statement of injury. Sam looked up. He kept his hands on the bench. "My father, sir." Your father is a pianist. My father was a piano tuner, sir, like Mr. Carolan. He died 10 years ago. He paused. He had 3 pianos at home. He taught me on all of them. He used to say I had the hands but not the temperament for the concert circuit. He was not wrong, sir. I get sick before audiences. You get sick. I throw up, sir, before any audience over 12 people. I did it at the parish hall when I was 16. I have not played for an audience since. He gave a small, ashamed half-smile. I think this counted as 11 people, sir. The maestro looked around the empty hall. The lads at the wings, the lighting man in the box, the manager with her folder, me. He looked back at Sam. You played the Rachmaninoff Prelude, he said. Better than I have ever played the Rachmaninoff Prelude. Better than my teacher played it. Possibly better than anyone I have heard alive. Sam shook his head. I played it the way my father taught me. That is all I did. Vasari sat down on the edge of the stage. He sat down the way a man sits down when his legs have given out. He set the coffee cup beside him. He put his face in his hands for perhaps 10 seconds. I have wondered since what he was doing with those 10 seconds. I do not know. When he looked up, he looked at his manager. Cancel the duo piece, he said. Leon. Cancel it. I do not want to play opposite the principal pianist tonight. I want to play opposite this young man. The Mozart for 2 pianos, if he will do me the honor. There was a long silence. Sam said, Maestro, I cannot, I have told you. I am ill before audiences. Then we will play it in the empty hall, Vasari said. Now, just us. The lads in the wings, Mr. Carolan with his mutes, the lighting man up there, that is your audience. 11 people. You said you could do 11, please, I am asking you. I would consider it a privilege I have not deserved. Sam looked at me. I gave him no help. I could not. I do not believe I have ever been less qualified to advise anybody about anything. He looked back at Vasari. I will need to wash my hands first, sir. They are still wet from the rain. He came back. The 2 of them sat down at the 2 pianos, one in stained brown coveralls and one in a long black overcoat with a cashmere scarf, and they played the Mozart for 2 pianos in D major, the K448, all 3 movements, on a Tuesday afternoon in October in an empty concert hall, for me and the 2 lads and the lighting man and the manager with her folder. It was the best thing I have heard in 46 years, inside Hadfield Hall. I will not try to describe it. I do not have the words for the thing the 2 of them did together with the Mozart. I will tell you only that Vasari, who had walked in superior and tired and used to having his shoes brought to him, played the first movement with the seriousness of a young man auditioning for a teacher he has just discovered he wants. By the second movement he had stopped trying to lead. He was following. He was following a piano mover in coveralls because the piano mover in coveralls had a thing to say about Mozart that the maestro, in 11 months of touring, had forgotten was sayable. By the third movement they were laughing. They were playing the K448 and laughing at each other across the stage like 2 boys, and at the end of it they sat on their respective benches and Vasari clapped with his hands like a member of the audience for perhaps 30 seconds, and then he got up and crossed the stage and shook Sam's hand and said, You will never throw up again. Do you hear me? You are too good. The world needs to hear what your father taught you. I will help, if you will let me. Sam thanked him. He said he would think about it. He picked up his cap from the corner of the Steinway, set it on his head, and went out to the loading bay to help his lads pack up the dolly. The recital that night went on as scheduled. Vasari played the first half alone, Chopin, the 4 ballads, brilliantly, with a kind of humility I had not heard in his playing before. The duo Mozart in the second half went on with the regional symphony's principal pianist, as billed. Most of the audience never knew that the maestro had asked, that afternoon, for a substitution that did not happen. I have told them here and there in the years since. They never quite believe me. Sam did not, in the end, take up the concert career. He went back to moving pianos. He took on private students, though, at his father's old upright at home, children mostly, the children of friends, and after some years a teaching post at the music school in the next town. He plays now at small chamber evenings in church halls and old people's homes within an hour's drive of where he lives. Audiences of 40, 50, 80. He has not, so far as I know, thrown up at one of them. He keeps a Rachmaninoff Prelude on every program, and he plays it the way his father taught him, and people walk out of those halls quiet, the way people walk out of churches after a service that has done what a service is meant to do. Vasari and Sam exchanged letters for several years. The maestro sent him scores and recordings, and once a small ivory-handled tuning hammer that had belonged to a teacher of his. Sam wrote back, the few times he wrote, in the same plain, quiet hand he had brought to the keyboard that Tuesday. I have read one of the letters. Sam ended it. I have not forgotten what you said about my father. Thank you. He would have liked you. He always said the great ones were the ones who could be wrong out loud. And so I keep on tuning the pianos at Hadfield Hall. I am 73. I will retire in the spring. When my apprentices ask me, as they sometimes do, what the trick of this work is, what the secret is, I tell them the truth, which is that there is no trick and no secret, only the long, quiet honesty of caring about an instrument more than yourself. And then, if it is the right apprentice, I tell them about the young man in the brown coveralls who walked across the stage on a wet Tuesday in October, sat down at a Börsendorfer he had moved that morning, and played the first 3 notes of a Rachmaninoff Prelude in a way that made a famous virtuoso put his face in his hands. I tell them that you do not always know who in the room knows the most about the music. I tell them to be ready always, to be the maestro who is asked to follow instead of lead. And then I send them off to mute the high strings on the house Steinway, and I go and sit quietly in the dark of the empty hall, and I remember.